Welcome to the biomechanics of a goalkeeping diving save. On the left-hand side, this is Assistant Professor of Biomechanics, Dr. Ronnie Ibrahim from Qatar University. And he and his team analysed the biomechanics of a goalkeeper's diving save. So I'm just going to go through these key points. So at the top we have a key. So the contralateral push off is a leg opposite to the movement direction of that the goalkeeper dive towards. And then the ipsilateral push off is the same side of a dive. So I'm going to start with a force output of horizontal and vertical dives, which is on the right hand side. So the solid lines are in blue and the red are high dives and the dashed lines are low dives. And what he found was goalkeepers produce much more horizontal momentum, which is in red, much more than vertical dives, and this is for both high and low dives. So horizontal dives in red, vertical in the blue kind of purple here. If you look at the force output on the bottom left of high and low dives, so high in red, low again in the purple, again we can see the force output with the angular momentum, and the low dives are in blue, and there's much more force with low dives, so goalkeepers need to turn and fall as quickly as possible for the low dives. If we then look at the force output of vertical dives and the contribution of vertical velocity in regards to centre of mass towards the ball, he looked at each leg. He looked at the ipsilateral leg and the contralateral leg by using force plates to see how much power was generated in each leg. The vertical contralateral leg is in blue and the ipsilateral leg is in red, and the ipsilateral leg is the last leg that leaves the ground, and the contralateral leg is contributing the peak force, the highest amount of force, and of course throughout the dive this power lasts longer. So the peak highest force is a contralateral leg. If we then study two, which used 9 elite goalkeepers and a ball cannon, or you might see them make globus, and the high balls were set at 190 centimeters and the low balls were set at 30 centimeters. There's about plus or minus of 10 centimeters. The speed of the cannon was calibrated to 1.2 seconds. And so if we see on the bottom left, it is the force point output of joint moment, and joint angular velocity, which is just speed. And again, we're looking at the ipsilateral leg, which is in red, the contralateral, which is in blue, and this is throughout this section here. And if you just see these purple dots here, these are the significant bits. So the first column is hip flexion and extension. The second column along is hip abduction and adduction in a frontal plane. The third column is joint flexion and a knee joint flexion and extension. The fourth is a angle joint, and that's plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. So that's, so if your foot moves towards your shin pads and then away. And it's looking at all kind of like, first of all, the joint power, joint moment, and then we go into speed. So there's not a lot of force generated with the hip abduction and abduction. There's big moments around hip extension. The contralateral, yeah, I said, is in blue. And the joint power is highest from the hip extension and the ankle plantar flexion. So in the first column and in the last column. So this is the magnitude in terms of values. And then if we go on to the joint and muscle coordination sequence, and he looked at what comes first, then the hip starts the movement, then it's the knee, and then it's the ankle when a goalkeeper dives. And it's it's in both legs, the sequence is the same. So the hips start the movement in terms of peak power. And the contralateral leg first, and then the ipsilateral. So again, here. The goalkeeper dive isn't simultaneous, so it's one leg after the other. We can see this kind of force here. So I'm just going to go to the next page. And the next one, he looked at stance width and knee angles. So stance width, 75%, 100%, and 50%. PT1 is preferred technique 1. PT2 is preferred technique 2. And goalkeepers completed 2 sets just to normalize the results before and after any changes were made. And if we go to the next slide in regards to the study findings, so we see these kind of yellowy goldy dots. A stance width of 75% resulted in a faster dive, and that's in high dives and that's in low dives, and that's with a stance width of 75%. And that's much more faster than kind of a preferred width of 35%, 40% up to 45% stance width for goalkeepers. And if we go to the bottom slide, the one on the left, the center of mass started much, much earlier, and it started to shift, and this was sustained, and this was the main difference between the stance width of 75%. So goalkeepers need to increase or do increase their stance width when doing a double tap, or I've heard an England goalkeeper say this is like a micro tap before they start to dive or going into this preferred PT1 stance. And of course, there's more force in their contralateral push-off, and they're able to move their center of mass quicker. So the focus on training is around this 75% leg length for optimal positions. And then just at the bottom here, your stance, so your footwork, how you set yourself up, your foot and your hip positioning is crucial. Because if this isn't right, then your subsequent actions and being able to execute them will not be successful. Okay, so that's just a wee section on the biomechanics of a diving save. The next video is going to be building strength and power for goalkeepers using force velocity profiles, and that's going to be in the next video.